This is Mrs. Linda Stevens, and she lives in Polk County, Florida. She had a really terrible run-in with the sheriff's deputies over a banking issue. And you may be wondering, wait a minute, Polk County Sheriff. Oh yeah, this dude. But at any rate, Linda has a very abhorrent, terrible story to tell, and we're going to listen to a little bit of it. She comes across as a really sweet lady. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon. This traumatic experience for me started on April 13th. And just to give you a little background of me, I'm a retired educator from Polk County Schools. I taught school. I was an assistant principal some 12 years. I was over the health curriculum for Polk County Schools for middle and high school.
Okay, we're not interviewing for a job, but okay. She has done a lot of community service for a very long time.
I'm very active in my church. I'm the immediate past president of the Polk County Retired Educators. I'm a community activist, and I care about people. I'm going to try to fill in the blanks that attorney and Rufus left out. When I went to that ATM, Rufus and I went to the ATM together.
Now she's going to an ATM at a bank that she's been banking at for a long time to put some money in.
As we normally do. I looked later at the ATM, and there were more than 8 cameras up under the shed of the ATM machine. So I knew they had captured me on one or more of those videos. And when I left, and Rufus said, well, Linda, go back after they open at 7 o'clock. And I went back up there and I had to talk with the cashier. I told him the story. He asked me, did I have a receipt? And I said, yes. I showed him the receipt. Finally, he says to me, I can't help you. You need to talk to my supervisor. Of course, when the supervisor came, I shared my story. I showed him the receipt.
Okay, so she put money into the ATM and it didn't credit her. So she went to the bank and she complained about that. One thing led to another, and the sheriff's deputies were called in, and she was arrested and spent a pretty horrific tenure there in the Polk County jail. This lady seems like salt of the earth. I mean, she reminds me of my grandmother. Well, I mean, besides the black thing. She has contributed so much to the Polk County school system over the probably 40, 50 years that she's worked for them. But something about this story bothers me. And I was thinking, what is it? What is it? She is sincere, sweet, kind. What could possibly be the problem? We'll find out in a moment. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
So what is it about her testimony that bothers me so much, that leads me to believe that we're not necessarily getting the true story here? Well, here it is. This is her lawyer. Oh, when I heard that he was representing her, I'm thinking, ah, hell, here we go. Because you know, and I know, that nothing that this man does reflects the truth. So we're going to listen to her story and listen to him talk. And then I'm going to try to see if I can't parse together what I think happened.
Because we don't think this would have happened to everybody's mother. But when you understand the reality that banking while black is real in America. You understand? Some of us know, but by the grace of God, it's not our mother. And we have to challenge this banking while black, not just here in Central Florida, but all across America, because this implicit bias has terrible consequences for our people, and it had terrible consequences for Miss Linda Stevens, who you're going to hear from in a few minutes.
My question is that if she's going to go on and tell us what happened, why do we need to hear from you? Why are you going to tell the story first? Well, my gut feeling is he wants her to hear him tell the public what he wants the public to hear. We'll see. Okay, so what we're going to do is forget Benjamin Crump's storytelling here. We're going to go straight to her testimony.
Of course, when the supervisor came, I shared my story. I showed him the receipt. And he said to me, he said, if you look behind you, you can see the truck of the man here working on the ATM machine because something had happened with the machine. He said, you need to fill out a dispute form. I said, I'm not disputing with myself that I put the money in the machine. He said, but you need to come back, and he said, that's the way it is, that's the policy. You need to come back and fill out a dispute form, go on the inside. So after 9 o'clock, I had to go back to Mid-Florida and went and signed in and spoke with this lady. I told her my story. She said, can I see your receipt? I gave her my receipt. She made a copy of it. She said, you need to fill out a dispute form. And I told her I'm not disputing that I put my money. She said, but that's the policy. So she filled out the form, and of course I signed it. And she said to me, she said, give us 2 hours, not more than 3 hours.
I just want to interrupt here a moment. Her mannerisms indicate that she was probably pretty excited at the time that she's talking to the tellers. I'm curious to how belligerent she was, because you don't normally call the cops and have them take somebody out of your establishment unless something's gone terribly wrong.
And everything will be in order in your account. So I left there and I went home. I waited all day. And checking my account online, there was nothing in my account that indicated they had placed that money, credited my money to my account. I waited all night. I waited till the next day. And about 10:30 that next day, I went back to the bank. And I talked with the same teller, the first teller I had spoken with, and he said, I can't help you. And he gave me the supervisor again, and the supervisor came over. And I asked him, I said, where is my money? I said, all I want is my money. Where is it? I said, you told me that the ATM man was working on the machine, and you sent me in to fill out a dispute. Where? And he turned his back and walked off.
Yeah, I'm not buying this argument. A man walks up, he's a supervisor at a bank, and you just simply did nothing more than say, hey, I'd like to get my money. And he just turned around and walked away. My gut feeling is that you said something and you're not being real honest about what you said. But I wasn't there. I can't tell for sure. But I just find it really hard to believe that anybody would just do that. I don't think that kind of behavior is that of a bank manager.
By this time, the lady in the office, who I later was identified as the head teller, came and she said, ma'am, she said, I can help you in my office. And I went in the office with her, and she asked me what was going on, and I shared that same story with her.
Again.
And the receipt. And she said, well, ma'am, she said, you know how bureaucracy is. I said, no, I don't. I said, I don't want anything Mid-Florida's got. I said, I only want my money. So she said to me, she said, I don't know what happened with yesterday, but she said, I'm going to go ahead and just call the guy again to verify that he found your money. She called the technician. The technician told her, yes, I found her money in the machine. I found the $401 bills and the 1020s in the machine. Yet, when she got off of the phone, she said to me, she said, you're still going to have to give us 2 or 3 days to get your money in your account. So when the manager had come over.
She says that, well, that lady said that it was going to take 2 to 3 days. We don't know if that's what she said. Remember, who is her lawyer?
To the office. And she had another lady with her, and there was a police officer who came and stood directly to my right in the back of me.
That probably was not a police officer. That was probably security. Why would the police already be there? Nothing's happened so far, according to you. So they're not going to call in the police as some sort of preemptive strike against you. It was a security guard, and you'll see here why in a moment.
And she said, you just need to go ahead and leave, and we'll get your money straightened out. And I had to tell her the story as well. And so as we were sitting there, and I said, I just want my money. I need to pay my bill. I want my money. That's all I want. I said, I gave you cash money. I said, I didn't put checks in the machine. I put cash money in the machine. I just want my money. I said, that's all I want from Mid-Florida.
Yes. I'm getting the impression that the discourse was much more excitable than what we're getting here. But again, I have no way of knowing. But neither does Benjamin Crump.
So she said, if you don't calm down, we're going to have to call the popo.
If you don't calm down, we're going to have to call the police. This is obviously more than just a mad customer. And keep in mind, I mean, she very well may have a great reason to be mad. It sounds to me like if what she's saying is true, yeah, this is pretty crappy customer service on their part. They should have been able to give her the money a lot sooner. But as the lady said, you know how bureaucracy works. There are probably forms you have to complete. They don't want to just go around handing money out to people. So it might be a little bit more involved. I do think that maybe the bank tellers and stuff and such probably didn't handle this very well.
So we were sitting there talking, and I don't know what happened, but then a few minutes later, another police officer came in the room with his hand on his gun.
So if there was already a police officer there, why did they have to bring another one in? It wasn't a cop, that was security. Bank on it. And having his hand on his gun, that's not a threat. He's allowed to do that. If he pulls the gun out, now you got a real complaint.
And said, I thought I heard her say, I have a gun and I'm going to shoot you. I said, what are you talking about? And the most painful part of that was that office manager, that head teller, that other lady that was in there, the police officer standing next to me, nobody said nothing. I was the only one to speak up for myself.
Okay, my interpretation is that you were probably so loud and over talking of everybody that they couldn't get a word in edgewise. And their solution was just let her go ahead and rant. Again, I wasn't there, but I'm trying to piece this together. I have a feeling she said something.
And all I could think when he came in with his hand on his gun was that my life was in danger. My life was being threatened.
That's Benjamin Crump talking. He told her to say that.
But Ski was ready to take action because he thought. I said, sir, I don't have a gun. I said, I never owned a gun. I said, I never even shot a gun. What in the world are you talking about? Are you crazy? And he said to me, if you say the word gun one more time, I'm going to arrest you.
Yeah, arrest her for what? This is starting to become hard to believe. Now, if the cop had a body cam on, we would know the truth. And maybe she's right. Maybe this is exactly what happened. But I wouldn't put my money on it.
And I turned around and looked up at him and I said, gun? He said, you stand up and I'm going to arrest you. And he snatched my purse. He handcuffed me behind my back as tight as he could. And it was as tight as he could because my wrist was swollen when I got the handcuffs off. And he walked me out to his car and set me in his hot car for some 15, 20 minutes. In a hot car, 11:30, 12 o'clock in the day. Finally, the police officer comes to the car, drives me to the station, and when he gets to the car, I'm just traumatized. But at this time, I'd never been arrested. I never had any dealings with a police officer. I'd never been to court for anything outside of a speeding fine. And when we got there, he said, "You got to get out of the car." I said, "I'm not getting out of the car. You're not going to shoot me," because it was just he and I. And he's sitting there with his hand on his gun. It's his little monkey stick thing.
Okay, at this point, I'm calling bullshit. Look, the man opened up the car door and said you have to get out. He's a police officer. He's given you a lawful order. You say he had his hand on his gun. Really? And you're terrified? So the best protection is to sit there and antagonize him? Like, does sitting down give you some sort of force shield that prevents a bullet from passing through? What do you think that sitting in that car and getting him all jacked up really does for your personal safety? So if you're wondering why am I being so doubtful of the lady's earlier testimony, I wasn't until I heard this. And that started me to thinking, wait, she's being represented by Benjamin Crump.
He said, "You got to get out." I said, "No." He said, "You got to get out of this car one way or the other." And he opened the door and he took his hands and pulled me out of the car and dropped me on the concrete, scratching me all up and bruising me.
Well, okay, that's on you. That's your fault. That's not the officer's fault. He told you you had to get out of the car. You refused to do it. Of course, he is going to force you out of the car. What do you think he's going to do? Just say, "Oh, I guess we can't do anything now," and then just close the door and walk away? How is he going to get you into the station for booking? So you gave him no choice but to pull you out of the car. But you look like you're pretty heavy. So once he got you out of the car, your weight probably caused him to lose grip of you and you landed on the ground. This is on you. This part about getting injured is your fault, not the cops.
And he pulled me halfway into the building, and then when he got a wheelchair and put me in that and took me in this room with my hands still cuffed behind my back, I was quite helpless.
Yes, you're quite helpless. That's the way they want you when they take you to jail. And no, they're not going to take the cuffs off of you. Of course they're not.
It took me into this little square room with my hands still cuffed behind my back. I sat in this little room with my hands cuffed, and he came and he asked me, he said, are you going to talk to me? And I didn't say I wouldn't say anything. I didn't want to say anything for fear that he would take it the wrong way and take my life, because nobody was there but he and I.
Yeah, because police officers always just shoot people while they're in jail, where there are cameras everywhere. That's what pisses me off about this Sandra Bland deal. People say, the cops murdered her. No, Sandra Bland committed suicide. There was no chance in hell that a cop was going to be able to get in there and kill her and leave without the other inmates hearing it and without video cameras capturing it. They would have to have too many people involved in collaboration for something like that to happen. And there was also no motive. But this notion somehow that the cops are just going to shoot you while you're in a jail cell, give me a break, lady. Even the most hardened criminals don't think that's going to happen to them.
So finally he came, and another police officer, because I had sat on the floor, I was trying to get some relief from my arms. My arms had been behind my back for a long, long time, for about an hour by now. And because I'm not as young as I used to be, my arms was really, really hurting. And so they put me in a wheelchair and rolled me out. First they picked me up, one took one arm and one took the other arm and one took my legs, and they took me outside to the car and set me in a wheelchair right beside the door.
So you wouldn't stand. So passive resistance, yeah, that's what they're going to do. So far you refused to get out of the police car, and now you're admitting that you didn't cooperate with them when they tried to get you to move from one place to another.
And so they both took my shoulders and threw me into the car. And when they did, because the seats are not cushioned, my head hit real hard on the seat. And that's when my nose was fractured.
You don't look like you have a broken nose. But I just have a hard time believing that they threw you into the back of the car. What does that even look like?
I lost my shoes, my shirt flew up, and he looked at me, but he didn't say anything. So when he took me over to the sheriff department, the lady came out and she said, when she looked at me, she said, "Let me look at you and see how badly you're hurt." And so she looked at my bruises and checked me out and pulled my shirt down, and she took me in, and they took me in a little room, and they took all of my clothes, my bra, my underpants, everything, and put me on some other clothes. And then I was transported to the jail, and when I got there, they were feeding the other inmates that were there, and they said, "Well, do you want to feed her?" Because this time it was about 4 o'clock. And she said, "If she don't talk to us, she can't eat." And of course, I didn't eat.
Unbelievable.
So this is the third person that has encountered her from the police department and has had serious issues. Never mind the people at the bank.
So they asked the other lady, said, "Well, what do you want us to do with her? Where do you want us to put her?" And this big fat officer lady says, "I don't want you to put her anywhere where I can't see her." She said, "You need to call upstairs and get the supervisor down here." So it was 2 ladies came down, 2 supervisors. The first supervisor came over and looked at me, and she took her foot and kicked me just as hard as she could.
Yeah, okay, so now we have a 4th officer who shows up and just kicks her. Really?
On the shin of my legs. Then the other supervisor came, and I have a heart condition. I sleep with a CPAP. I have high blood pressure. She took her fist of her hand and did it like this and nuzzled me in my chest twice, just as hard as she could. Then she took her fingers and put it under the tender part of my arm and pinched me just as hard as she could.
I have no idea what that is. Maybe somebody out there who's been arrested could tell me what the officers are doing. It doesn't make sense at all, but okay.
And I kind of glanced up at her, and she told them, she said, "Well, she's all right." She glanced up at me. They said, "Well, how do you want the supervisor?" She said, I'll deal with him." So they took me by the arms and dragged me on the floor. And as they put me in the cell, they took my clothes at the same time. I was on this cold floor with nothing on. There was a no pillow. There was no real blanket. There was about 3 little scripts like this in there. There was no chair. There was a little toilet like this and a little basin about this big. And there were things crawling on the floor. There were brown spots on the
It's jail.
floor that looked like poop. There was white-looking paint on the floor. And a little tiny window up at the top. And I stayed there, and they came, and I didn't eat anything. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't eat anything the whole time I was there. I ate about 2 bites of a little corn dog about this long before I got out. But then I finally went to sleep, and I kept waking up and somebody would walk by and check on me. And the next morning they came, and the lady said, she said, "Who all wants to take a bath?" And when she got to me, she said, "Well, we know you don't want to take a bath." And she walked on by myself.
Yet another person who comes by and has had a negative interaction with you.
So this other lady came, and she says, "Well, we're seeing the psychiatrist today." She said, "You think you want to see the psychiatrist today?" And I told her, I said, I haven't had a telephone call. I haven't had anything. Nobody, my family doesn't know where I am or anything. So she went to the next cell and got the lady out of the next cell. And finally, a lady came about 3 hours later, and she came to me and she said, "Miss Stevens," she said, "they're telling us that you're crazy or you're suicidal."
Why would they say that? Again, something must have happened to cause all this. To have, half a dozen negative interactions with the police. And I get it. It's the police, or it's the sheriff's deputies, or the correctional officers. And yeah, they're not going to be necessarily nice people, but this seems to be out of bounds for a 75-year-old woman. So I'm not sure I'm getting the story straight here.
She said, "You're not crazy, are you?" I said, "No." And I kind of told her how I had ended up there. So then about 2 or 3 hours later, a lady came and said, "Do you want to go to first appearance?" Of course, I had to ask her what was first appearance. I said, I don't even know what first appearance is. And all of this happened to me because of that telephone call at Mid-Florida.
All because of that telephone call at something. I didn't quite make out what she said.
And so she explained to me that I would be going to a judge, but when she came, she brought me these clothes to put on, and it was a black outfit, and the top had these flowers caked up on it, and I smelled the crouch, and it was stinking. And I said, ma'am, I said, I'm not putting on those filthy pants next to my vaginal area. I said, I'm just not going to do that. She said, but the only other thing I have is a 3X. And so she went and she got the 3X. I said, if it's clean, I'll put it on. And she got it, and they took me to the court, and the lady told me, she said, they were debating whether or not they were even going to charge you. So when I got to the judge, she said, you had bail of $550. She said you needed to have called somebody to have them to come and set that out. But I found out my husband was already trying to take care of that. So when I went and stood before the judge says to me, he said, Ms. Stevens, he said, we're not going to charge you bail. Your bail has been dropped. All you need to do is go home and call in and wait for your court date. All because I went to Mid-Florida asking for my money.
So she's constantly referring back to the bank because they're suing the bank. They're not suing the sheriff's department or the jail. And I have a feeling I know why. Let's continue on.
So then I go back to the jail, and he tells me stay 500 feet from the Mid-Florida, don't go out of state, don't get drunk or get high.
Yeah, it's the usual.
So when I go back to the jailhouse, they again tell me, we got to take your clothes and you still got to stay in this cell naked. I was there about 3 or 4 hours before I was dismissed, but in the midst of being there those additional 3 hours, I stood up and looked, and there was a male person in one of the other rooms who apparently had come in to take out the garbage or something. He's standing there gazing at my naked body. And you're talking about embarrassed and humiliated.
I'm not sure I'm buying this story either, but this could be true. But I don't believe that they would have had a male out there cleaning the garbage around female inmates that are like nude. This might be Benjamin Crump again.
I was traumatized. I was like, oh my goodness. And he just stood there. He didn't, when I looked at him, he just there. He was standing there, just getting him a good eyeful. And I stepped back out of view into the corner. And finally, they came and they brought me my clothes, and they brought me this outfit I had on, and they took me to the jail, to the sheriff department, and they gave me my clothes to put on, and they said, we can't give you your pocketbook until you exit the building. And as I was getting ready to exit, they said, your husband's called and he's got the information, and they say, but before you walk out of that door, we need to take your mug shot, because they had not done any of that. And at that point, that was when they took my mug shot and had me to fingerprint on the Xerox machine, all because I asked for my money.
Again, circle back. Make sure that you keep telling them about the bank. That's who we're after.
All of this happened to me.
Unbelievable.
And I left, and then my husband and my daughter picked me up, and my husband took me out, and before we could get back home, there was a call from Mid-Florida on my cell phone that I had missed. There was a call on my husband's phone that he had missed. There was a call on our landline that had been missed, all from Mid-Florida Credit Union. And she said that her name was Valerie Dollison, and she wanted to come out and talk with me about what had happened, because they had looked at the video. And I asked her, I said, how do you know? She said, well, we looked at it, we saw everything that happened, and we know, we want to talk to you about the situation. So I said, I haven't been in 500 feet of Mid-Florida. Why do you want to talk to me? She said, well, we want to talk to you. It'll be okay. I just want to come and talk with you. So when she came, she had this white orchid in her hand, and she said, this is for me. She said, this is not for Mid-Florida. And so she said to me, she said, I'm here on behalf of Mid-Florida Credit Union. And she kept emphasizing, I'm here on behalf of Mid-Florida Credit Union.
Right, she has to. I mean, if she's going to offer you something, it has to be well understood that it's the bank doing this.
She said, we were wrong. She said, if we had done what we told you we were going to do the day before, you would not have been back at mid-Florida. I said, you are exactly right. She said, we're trying to understand how you felt and how you're feeling. And she said, the president wants to know how you feel. And I said, if you want to know how I feel.
So the president even wants to know how she's doing, okay?
I said, think about the fact that if it was your mama, I said, tell the president to think about the fact if it was his mama.
Exactly.
Or somebody that they knew and loved or something like that had come in just to ask for their money. I said, that's all I was asking for. She said, well, we were wrong. She said, they sent you this $300 gift card. And I was like, what? She said, a $300 gift card. And she left it on the table. And she said they're paying called it a goodwill offering of one house payment for you.
So they're basically giving you $900. That's right. They're going to pay your mortgage for 1 month, and they're giving you a $300 gift card. Keep in mind, the bank doesn't know what happened in the jail. And it wasn't the bank's decision to have her arrested. So her real grief is against the sheriffs. As far as the bank is concerned, they could have given her money back sooner. They probably should have. It was a mistake. The fact that she did something or whatever that got her arrested, well, that's not on us. We didn't do that. But let's see if we can offer her something to make her feel a little bit better about our customer service. Let's pay her mortgage for a month, and we'll give her another $300 gift card. And the actual person brought her own carnation for you. So the bank is trying to make amends here. The way you dismiss it tells me that you've been talking to Benjamin Crump.
And they said, if you need anything, let us know. They said, our attorney is going to take care of everything, that they're going to make this thing wholly disappear. And so later, when time came for me to go to court, the court called me and they said somebody was trying to take care of what happened to you, but it was a thing where it went against their interests and they couldn't do anything. But they said, anyway, the state attorney's office had just dropped the whole case.
Right. The bank contacted the district attorney's office and basically said, hey, look, we want this problem to go away, and we're not going to stand up and be a witness for you. Looking back on it, it looks to me like your sheriffs actually were the ones that were out of line here. Maybe they could have trespassed her instead. And that's another interesting point. At no point does she say that she was trespassed from the premises. Did they not tell you to leave? Well, if they did, why didn't you? And why didn't you mention it? And if they didn't, then the sheriff's office really did something wrong here. But regardless, it's not on the bank. So the bank probably contacted the DA and said, hey, look, we want you to drop the thing. We're not going to be cooperating on this. We think that the sheriffs are a little bit out of line here. And can you make the problem go away? And the DA said, yeah, sure. I got other things to handle.
So I got to say absolutely nothing. But I was just traumatized. I was humiliated. I was dehumanized, all because I wanted my money that I had placed in a bank that I had been banking with at that time some 47 and a half years. They had financed my house.
Wait, they financed your house? Well, why in the hell didn't you go to the loan agent and tell them, hey, I put this money into the ATM to pay for it at your bank, and the teller here will tell you, I have my receipt. If they're going to have problems with your mortgage, why didn't you go to them? The loan agent could have went to the teller. The teller could have said, yeah, we're having some real troubles. She honestly did submit this money to pay for her mortgage. The loan agent might have come back to you and said, okay, look, we'll give you another 5-10 days grace period on this. Why didn't you even try? Good grief.
To pay my mortgage was what I was trying to do because they have my house mortgage now. I have a truck finance through them. now. And I went through all of that just to, I don't understand. And right now I have a psychiatrist. I've seen my psychiatrist that I've had to pick up since this happened. She said that I'm dealing with post-traumatic stress syndrome. She's got me on 3 meds. She's got me on 2 to help keep me level.
All this over a couple of days in jail, huh? Why is she going to a psychiatrist? Why is she claiming PTSD? Because Benjamin Crump told her. Who honestly believes this? Well, it could be true. I don't want to be too cynical.
She's got me on 1 to help keep the nightmares away. I have a therapist who teaching me all these games and things to help me to deal with this situation when it comes up, because it constantly comes up. And I made the mistake of watching this thing on television the other night where this young man was brutally killed by the police. That thing just went all over me because his hands were handcuffed behind his back.
Benjamin Crump. He's laid this thing out.
And I shouldn't have watched it, but I went through it all back over again, and I saw my therapist on yesterday. I was with my psychiatrist last week, and it's just more than I can deal with.
So you may be wondering, well, why isn't she suing the sheriff's office or the county, really, because they're the ones that run the jail? It's because they have the videos. They probably know what really happened, and they have testimony from the officers. But if she can just sue the bank, all that's not admissible. And they're not going to call up the officers to testify, because the issue will be just simply about the fact that they didn't credit her for the money that she submitted. Now you might be thinking, well, wait a minute. Did the bank really do anything wrong? Wouldn't they win in court? Yes, but you don't understand Benjamin Crump. Benjamin Crump doesn't go to trial. He basically takes your company and whatever, and he drags it through the mud. He'll hold press conference after press conference where she gets to tell this story about how horrible things were, and therefore the bank loses customers. It's extortion. And so Benjamin Crump is going to go to the bank and say, hey, look, we need about $100,000 to be quiet about this. And the bank will come out and say, look, none of that actually happened. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's the court of public opinion that matters. So how much of this story do I believe? Well, I think that she went through a traumatic time, and I have a feeling that the bank probably didn't handle this very well. But I have just a hard time believing that her story is really true. And the fact that she didn't even go to the loan agent to talk to them about the fact that she might be late with a mortgage because of this is really astonishing. We don't know, but you can't trust Benjamin Crump at all, ever, anything.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens, for bearing your heart. I think she said it best, how humiliating, because she wanted her money from Mid-Florida Credit Union. This bank, who she had banked with for almost 50 years, obviously didn't respect her as a valued customer and called the police on what she and we believe was banking while black.
Banking while black. That's what they're going to be using. And they're going to take that and drag the bank's name through the mud unless the bank ponies up some cash.
In America. We'll take your questions at this time, as many as we can.
Mr. Crump, can you explain to people why you believe this is about race?
Why do you believe this was about race?
If the allegations are true, why wouldn't this just be a terrible case of customer service?
Why wasn't this just simply bad customer service?
You know, Lewis, that's the one thing we always grapple with, because we look for videos, like with these police cases, we look for videos where the banks are arresting white citizens who are not doing anything but saying we want to be treated as a valued customer. We don't see those videos, but how many videos have we seen of black people being handcuffed in banks and dragged out?
I know of 2, and in both cases, they deserved it. In one case, a lady tried to pull out an astonishing amount of money in one day. And the bank said, look, I think it was like $60,000. And the bank said, we can't give you that money in one day. And that happens a lot. If you think you can go to the bank and just pull out all your money, yeah, good luck. Doesn't happen. Well, it might. But a bank does not have to give you all your money upon request. There's no law. And she got belligerent and they called the cops. The other one was where this one black girl tried to cash a check for like $100,000 and they wanted to put a hold on it until they verified it. She threw a fit, got trespassed, refused to leave, and the cops came and dragged her out. Both of those are perfectly understandable from the bank side of things. A $100,000 check, of course you're not going to cash it until you clear it. But she would not listen. So I only know of 2 cases where this has happened to black people, and in both cases they were very well deserved.
For saying, we just want our money. And what happens every time?
We just want our money. We just want our $100,000 right now. Well, we don't have the $100,000. Okay, here we go.
Every time.
God, I wish that little beeping thing would run all the time.
On these cases, it turns out they say, we were wrong. We apologize to the black customer.
No, they didn't apologize. I don't know where you're pulling this out of.
That's why we believe that banking while black is real. And we don't believe Miss Linda Stevens would have had the police called on her if she were a white woman.
You don't believe that, but you have no evidence. But you see, with Crump, it doesn't matter. Nothing was probably said that indicated that her being black had anything to do with this. But it doesn't matter because it's not going to go to trial. He's going to extort money from the bank and he'll pocket 40% of it. And then he'll move on to the next victim.
Will you be filing complaints against the sheriff's office?
We're contemplating getting full justice for Miss Linda Stevens, and we believe that the bank is going to interplead the sheriff's office.
I have no idea what he is saying there, but he didn't say yes. He said he's contemplating, but it was the sheriff's office that did all the horrendous things to her, not the bank. But again, the sheriff's office has all the videos. And they have lots of eyewitness testimony to fall back on. And I have a feeling that's why he's not dragging the sheriff's office into this. Because my gut feeling is she was far more belligerent than she's letting on. Or maybe not. Maybe she's telling the truth. In which case, I'm being very unfair to her, and I admit that. Like my video, subscribe to my channel.